So let's do it all. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good day, happy Friday, happy Saturday if anyone's in Australia. Welcome to Ladies Go Live podcast. I'm joined with Luis and I'm about to interrogate him for 30 minutes on his health, well-being and his professional career. So hi Luis, good morning to you.
Hi, how are you, Liz?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. So I'm guessing everyone can hear me?
We can hear you.
We're good to go. All right. Yeah, hi, let's do this. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my usual one is forgetting to press the live button. So we've done that. We're good. We're there.
Okay, good.
So obviously, I'm just saying how great you are. And, you know, you're going to tell us about your health, well-being, professional career. Who are you? I know, obviously, you're a wonderful dad and you have a profession. But what is it that you exactly do so our listeners know?
Okay, so just a brief introduction. And I'm just going to start with like my childhood, not like my professional career. But yeah, so my parents are both Venezuelan. And, you know, for those that know, you know, it's a country right now that is in a ton of turmoil, but in its prime was a very prosperous and wonderful place to live and grow up. Unfortunately, now refugees from my country are spread all over the world. But I was born in Kentucky in the United States of America, which is kind of an oddball for a South American. But yeah, first generation American, had a wonderful childhood up in Kentucky. I will say that, you know, never struggled from any type of racial inequality or anything like that, which I think, you know, places in the southern U.S. might have a bad rap for, but certainly wasn't my experience. In fact, my friends from kindergarten, which include a friend named Josh Lindsay, who went home to his mom after picture day at school and showed her a picture of me and said, "Mom, look at my friend. He's brown and he wore a bow tie to school today." So yeah, so that, you know, they've been my friends all the way until today. And yeah, so basically, say I had a great childhood in Kentucky, and then I ended up doing my middle school and high school in Venezuela after my parents got divorced. And you know, a lot of people would say, why would you grow up in the United States and then, you know, go finish out your education in a third world country? But I'll say that, you know, I graduated in 2000, and at the turn of the century, you know, Venezuela was definitely a place where you could have had a career, had a life, and moved on. But that was maybe a year after Chavez came into power, 2 years, and suddenly, you know, things started getting nationalized. Certain industries started closing. Executives were suffering from different kidnappings and those type of things. So it just became, you know, with my dad being an executive at an IT consulting firm, just became more imperative that we sought, you know, a better future for me. And at the time, my 5 and 6 year old sisters, who are now grown women, of course. So yeah, so my father was transferred to the Miami, the LATAM headquarters of his office, and we all emigrated to Miami. So I had, you know, my father's family in Kentucky, my mother's family in Miami, and that's how I came to ultimately make Miami my home here in the United States, along with probably close to 1 million other Venezuelans who inhabit this population now. So professionally, you know, everyone in Venezuela, they had a really rigorous process to get into public schools, and their public universities are wonderful, but you had to take this standardized test, and basically, if you weren't in like the 98th percentile nationally, you didn't get a spot at a university. So you can imagine the focus in your senior year in high school is just this, you know, crushing the standardized test, having like test prep every day after school with the best tutors. And that was something that school provided. I ultimately did test wonderfully and got into my top choice at 4 different colleges there, and then ultimately did not go because we moved to the United States. So I ended up in Miami. I actually came here with no knowledge of what I could have done for my undergrad, no one to advise me. So I signed up. We moved to Boca Raton, Florida, and I signed up at the Florida Atlantic University, which was the school up the street. Their only requirements for admission were a pencil and a pulse. And I wanted to study engineering, so you know, it was close to my house. I also, you know, I did think about getting into you know, private schools and such, and I applied to University of Miami. And when we saw it was going to be, you know, almost as much as our house for me to attend school there for a year, you know, we opted for the pencil and a pulse school.
Down the road, yeah.
Yes. But as life would have it, I studied the best I could. I ultimately ended up joining, and I do thank the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers for helping me launch my career. But I joined that minority organization, and they had a yearly conference every year, where you could go seek engineering jobs. And I ultimately landed a great gig at Raytheon Company, which was where I started my career as an electrical engineer. So ultimately there, I was able to trade up schools. They had this advanced studies program where they would sponsor your graduate degree. So they paid for me to go to Southern Methodist University, which is a step up from my undergrad. Allowed me to get a master's in an engineering discipline. And ultimately I used that to shift from engineering into the business side.
Yeah.
I'll say from there, it's all history. I fell in love with the business side. I went from drawing up contracts for military equipment and with other militaries to do foreign military sales, attending conferences, shaking hands to sell our products. It is something you have to have a top security clearance to discuss, but in broad strokes, I can say it was, major avionics suites and other things for the military. And I bet Liz used some of our equipment, to be completely honest.
I may have done.
But ultimately, I had a couple, I would say, internal conflicts where I wasn't a big fan of what the equipment was being used for, and ultimately what I was contributing to. There was a side of me that thought it was wonderful to be helping national security. And quite honestly, if you're a tech person, the tech is mind blowing and it's super cutting edge to work with, and it feels great to be a part of such brain power. But I ultimately did see like its ultimate impact on the end victims, and I thought maybe there was something else I could be doing with my life. So I always liked business, so I ultimately applied to Columbia Business School. I'll be honest with everyone. I wanted to be a Harvard MBA, and I applied for 2 years. I took the GMAT maybe 4 times, could not get a score that would get me anywhere into a top 10 school. Finally, on my 5th time, 2 years into my journey, I scored above a 700, which was a respectable score. Still not in the 90-something percentile, but good enough to get you above that minimum bar. And after my 2nd year of persistence and getting rejected from all sorts of schools, I even had a consultant that I hired to help me market myself better to the schools. I ultimately got into Columbia Business School, and that was like one of the happiest days of my career. What I will say it meant for me was suddenly doors opened. I was able to get internships pre-MBA, which is where I started in consulting with Deloitte. I then ultimately did unpaid internships in private equity just because I wanted to flex my finance muscle, and I wanted someone to mentor me in financial modeling in preparation for what would be my summer internship. Because when you go for a full-time MBA, you don't work, and then you study for basically 21 months, and then you have a summer period where you get to go do an internship that's paid usually for about 9-10 weeks.
Yeah.
So I chose that internship to be on Wall Street at Credit Suisse. I got a fellowship there. That was also a very proud day because I interviewed. There were about 400 candidates interviewing for 2 fellowships.
That's
and
good.
Yes, and they were 2 minority fellowships, and I got 1 out of the 2 of them.
That's
So it was a really awesome experience. Unfortunately, investment banking was not awesome. I was not a fan of working every day till 2 a.m. Other things that I won't bore people with as far as Wall Street culture, but I was happy that I had the opportunity to do it, but it wasn't where my life was gonna end up ultimately. So I went back to consulting with Deloitte. I entered a mergers and acquisitions practice because even though I didn't want to be a banker on the transactional side, I did want to enter mergers and acquisitions. And I basically rotated around the big 4 in different capacities for mergers and acquisitions. And now I do what's called value creation, which is basically help folks find synergies and merge 2 companies. So I'll pause there. That's kind of how I got to where I am in my career, and we can talk more about the role important women have played in my life to get there. But that's where I'm at today.
But the thing is, I love your story, so it's not the first time I've heard it. So, but what gets me is the power of networking. You put yourself in different places. You've done free internships. You took a pen and pulse education, which was going to be the best, but you've managed to keep going. But the other thing is, like you said, I was from a third world country, really. I was from a country where you could have gone, there's no hope for me, but of course your dad took a job, you kind of kept the mindset of, actually, I'm not going to dispute my heritage. It's who I am, but I'm going to keep going. It's not going to be a limiting factor for what I want to achieve.
True story. I also want to clarify, I did come from a third world country, but, I can never say like I started at the bottom or had a tough life. I mean, my family was always, always took good care of me. So it's not a rags to riches stories, for sure. But it was someone, navigating uncharted territory. And definitely I'm the first person in my family, in my immediate family anyway, to reach my level of education. And I'll tell you what, I certainly won't be the last, because now it's an example that that has been set for my siblings. My sisters are now both have postgraduate degrees, and it's now table stakes as far as the expectation for my child, because I have a 6-year-old daughter as well.
So you set the bar.
A bar that hopefully she will break through as a barrier.
We'll just say a quick hello to obviously the guys who are listening. Thanks for your comments. Obviously Jack, Candy, and the other guys. Nice to have you with us. If you do have anything specific, obviously we're here for about another 15-20 minutes. If you've got anything you want to interrogate Luis on, drop it in the comments, and of course we will ask it to him. But otherwise, obviously your journey is fantastic, your professional career. And of course, what impact has your health had? Because obviously that can't have been a smooth ride. You can't have just completely had no stress, no mental pressure. What's been the hardest challenge you faced along the way?
Look, the real challenge is compartmentalizing, right? And then still being able to perform at your best, because there's a few things that come with me as myself. And again, I don't want to focus this on, on minority from a racial or a gender standpoint, right? But I will say that unfortunately, there is a lot of pressure to perform as a minority, because you don't see a lot of them in director or managing director or C-suite levels, right? So when you get there, you feel like you're fortunate to be there, but at the same time, you always have to kind of defend your right to be there and establish your relevance as someone who is equally prepared. So for me, that's always been important. And what that means for me is, I have to watch carefully my image. For example, if I try not to drink too heavily at corporate events, or be too controversial in with visibility and other things, right? Just because I want to make sure that I'm earning my spot, right? But all that to say that that with all these things, like all these initiatives now, one thing I really like that I'm seeing lately, just in the culture diversity initiative world, is are the JEDI professionals, which have basically I don't know if everyone knows what it stands for, but it's justice, equality, diversity, and inclusion. So now that we've got this, all these, the new racial inequality, that's not that it's new, but the new awareness and the fact that companies are actually doing something about it is important. So again, I don't want to be that person that people approach for culture diversity and inclusion initiatives all the time, because it's not something I'm good at or necessarily want to do anything more than support, right? I don't want to lead in that area.
You've kind of been connected with because of your background.
Correct. But I will say that we all kind of have an obligation to build affinity with folks, and and as much as you mentor people for racial affinity reasons, it's always important. Like I always try to mentor women, or seek mentorship from women, right? Just to build the right alliances and have the right representation, in the workplace.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I could now interrogate you about how the pandemic's been, but I want to go back because obviously before you used to travel a lot with work. So how did you deal with taking care? Obviously, you got a 6-year-old daughter, juggling the commitments to that, taking care of your well-being, and also staying top of your game. How did you manage to put it all into place?
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate to have a really good like family support structure. I'm actually so I'm separated from my 6-year-old daughter's mother. However, she's a working professional as well. And as a co-parent team, we have set up a whole infrastructure. Basically, the nanny is one of my daughter's classmates,
Mm-hmm.
who essentially is her mom. They've been best friends since they were little. She has to do homeschooling for her daughter anyway.
Yeah.
So, for them two to be able to be best friends, kind of join the same quarantine, we were blessed to have that all throughout the pandemic. And it's actually an arrangement that's going to remain in place afterward, in lieu of other, after school programs.
Yeah.
But without that support, it would be virtually impossible. I will say that the firm I work for has also played a strong role. Like, they basically deprioritized benefits that didn't make sense, that people weren't using. As an example, like pet insurance, or maybe they said, you know what, we're going to reduce your 401k match, that type of thing. But you were able to retain your salary. And what they were doing is giving these cash reimbursements for childcare. So, for example, they gave us like $3,000 to say, hey, if you have to have a neighbor watch your kid, you've got a bucket of $3,000. As long as you submit some sort of receipt, we can handle that for you. And that ultimately, our benefits renewed in July, so I got that twice. And that basically, that $6,000 bonus is what's been able to make it so that I have absolutely no hardship in taking care of my child. And I know that that's not something that every company does, but I think it just goes to show how, if leaders prioritize the needs of their workforce, they can make it so that people can get through this. Again, it sounds privileged and blessed, but where I think it's awesome is the fact that my company gave me that. I was able to free up time for my ex-wife. And the fact of the matter is that if I hadn't, she'd be another victim of just another woman that loses her job, can't provide, no one cares about, and ultimately probably would have very little sympathy in the workplace. Her job did not provide those benefits, but we don't know what how they would have reacted if she hadn't had that time to continue working. And based on things I've seen from CUNIC, for example, which is a startup that one of my colleagues from business school started, which I recommend to everyone. She advocates a lot. Her name is Liz Gulliver, and she advocates a lot for for inequality in the workplace for women, and they are disproportionately affected by the pandemic and childcare, unfortunately.
I mean, it's good the fact you've said it straight there. Teamwork, you work together. So although it's you not together, you've got the same outcome, that you got the same result you want. You care for your daughter, you're doing it together, and making sure it works best for both of you.
Sure. And then the other piece is, look, the stress and the travel, that's something I probably won't have to come back to for another couple of months. But, there's when it's not stress for travel, now it's stress for being cooped up in your home, right? And it brings a whole different set of dynamics, right? I mean, when you're on the road, are you distracted? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you are you coordinating with your colleagues in time to meet a deadline for your client? So there's palpitations involved, high levels of anxiety. And it's just kind of a fast life, right? Can you do all that and make it to the airport in time? Or are you going to suffer delays, right? Who are you going to meet along the way? But then, when you're cooped up at home, it's how do you muster up the energy to go through another Groundhog Day? Are you camera ready? Are you remembering to hit mute? Who's going to walk up behind you?
Have you slept enough? You still need that so you don't have the big.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but I don't know. The only thing that I've told myself over and over again is, one, you need to get support from the people that are going to get you through this, and two, and what everyone should keep in the back of their mind is this is temporary. It's temporary. And even if you end up without a workplace, working from home, the fact that at some point we'll be able to go back out and socialize again will make all this a lot easier.
Yeah.
And then I've even heard of companies, the ones that have divested all their real estate, are now paying for memberships for some of those WeWork type places. Like even by my house in Fort Lauderdale, they've got like these really cool little like,
yeah,
we explain them. Yeah.
So the people that, there's no point because they have people that travel all the time. They use those, and it's great because you can go in, hot desk, basically, use the space that you need, and you don't need to pay for the real estate, the product.
Yeah, and it's almost like a gym membership. Like you can reimburse your employees so that if they're bored from working at home, they can have this subscription to this work-share space. What do they have there? Coffee, maybe a keg of beer in the afternoons, and then it's just COVID-friendly little workstations and outdoor areas for you to feel like you're in a working environment, even if it's not entirely the corporate identity of your company.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of innovative solutions like that out there right now.
Because obviously that affects the mental well-being. So mental well-being, obviously, we know is really important. Would you say that's fundamental for all professionals to make sure that their mental well-being is on point?
100%. In fact, I'm glad you mentioned it because that's another one of the big benefits they beefed up, right? They got rid of our 401k matches, that type of thing, and said, hey, let's help people survive. Let's help them take care of their kids so they can work, right? And then the other thing they did is, hey, let's take care of their mental health. So they started, they started basically giving us subscriptions to Ginger, which is like kind of like a hotline for like if you need someone to talk to or you're not feeling good, or I don't want to say like a not only for like suicidal tendencies, but just if you're depressed and down in general, or you're just lonely, right? Those are problems that affect all human beings. And
a lot of it, we just need talking therapy. So there's so many mental health, but it's even just mental well-being, things that aren't quite that bad, where you just need to escape your own mind.
It could just be upkeep, right? Like, yeah, like that whole stigma that talking to a professional is makes you crazy, I think is it's out the window. I mean, everyone needs mental health, and it's something that you need to take deliberate steps to achieve. And if you don't, you're likely not performing at your best. And in addition to that, they have all the, like the Chopra and the other type of meditation, more, I wouldn't call it spiritual, but anyway, like the more softer side of things. But yes, I mean, I even my child meditates for school. She does it with some weird Pokemon instructor, but the point is, yes, like all that stuff is available. The guided meditations. Sometimes they put them on the calendar and do them firm wide, but I honestly believe that those things are really helpful, and that I noticed at least my company did take deliberate efforts for folks to join in that type of activity. The other thing I want to say is that compartmentalizing, right? And this goes in with the mental health. I know it's kind of calmed down a little bit, but when the whole George Floyd thing and Black Lives Matter and stuff was kind of a big deal here in the U.S., I'm sure it kind of propagated throughout the world in some places. And you can have your different views on whether it's real or not, or justified or not, or whatever. But for those that it affected, think about having to compartmentalize that part of your life and then still, show up to work and act like nothing happened, or, sometimes have people check in on you, sometimes not. So I think that companies that are a little bit more proactive and take steps to make sure employees are comfortable in that sense, or that at least those difficult conversations are had, are going to see a workforce response that's favorable.
Yeah. I mean, Jack's actually which kind of connects slightly, because he's highlighted we are social creatures. So of course, when we see something, we react obviously to it, but obviously remote working will affect our social well-being and how we react to other people. And, for example, being here in the UK, that Black George, what was his name again? Oh my God.
Floyd.
So, George Floyd. There you go. That was in the news. It wasn't here, but it's still hit our news headline as top news, and these riots and things like this. So it actually became a social implication because people started reacting to it, because they react to a social norm. How do you think the remote working will change and affect our socialization?
I'm for example, this afternoon I have a virtual happy hour. I know it's not something new, but that's one way people are doing it. I will say that I've actually gone through deliberate efforts now to set up one-on-one Zoom calls with friends that I have all over the world. And again, that comes from Venezuelans just fleeing the country, because some of them couldn't get visas for here. Some of them went to Europe because that's where they had family. Others ended up in Australia. It is what it is. But so that's kind of how I've taken the downtime for interaction, right? From a social standpoint, look, I think people are going to look to build out their own spaces at home, like maybe leave the cities, go have go to a bigger space so you can invite people over and build your own communities, even if they're slowly opening up. But but yes, I agree. I mean, the landscape has changed forever. Unfortunately, I was already in a secluded type business, so it wasn't heavy for me. Like, as a consultant, I only visit my clients as needed. And I'm not on those type of projects that are Monday through Thursday for a year. I do 6-week projects. I go at the beginning to discover some things. I go sometimes in the middle for a readout for 2 days, and then at the end to give you my conclusions. But the rest of it has all been done remotely for me, and this is way before the pandemic. So I've already adapted to a work from home lifestyle. All I can say is that if you make your space cozy, you can be extremely productive, meaning like as monitors, maybe have some weights around so you can like lift during calls, be nice and caffeinated. But yeah, build yourself a productive space that's ergonomically friendly. But from a social standpoint, unfortunately, I think people are just going to have to get comfortable with having a virtual presence and understanding how to augment that and get comfortable with who you are in front of the camera.
So with obviously this changing world, remote working and all this, what's one tip or bit of advice you would give to others, because you've got a long-term experience within this environment? What's one tip or advice you give to others to do moving forwards?
I would just say become an expert at managing your time and use your calendar. Always push off on people that your calendar is a true reflection of your availability. So then, if you want to do things, you want to have a daddy-daughter date, put it on the calendar so nobody bugs you during lunch. If you, if same thing, like if you're not having the productivity you think you're supposed to have because you don't have the right peripherals, see if your company can give you some sort of stipend to achieve that. Other than that, I would say, that working remotely, something needs to be taken seriously because it's almost like a new skill set. Yeah. Like I'll share this last thing. My sister's 22, just got hired by Oracle yesterday. Graduates in May from University of Miami, Ohio. The fact of the matter is she's starting her career just as she started her internship as a junior, being a remote worker. To her, it's not strange, and for many people in that generation below, it won't be. So technology is here to stay, and quite honestly, look out for new types of programs where the camera will be taking pictures of you to make sure that you're in front of your computer and working. It'll be penalizing you or supposedly coaching you as far as to which apps you have open at what times that are managing your productivity. So I would just say, if you've been on the sidelines waiting to get tech friendly, or you're thinking that you're just having to get through this remote work period, and that it's going to end and you're going to go back into the office, depending on what field you're in, that may be true, but odds are this is here to stay. So get good at it.
There you go. So obviously, Liz, I'm conscious of time, as we just hinted on time management and our scheduling. So best way to contact you through LinkedIn, is that correct?
100%.
Okay, well, your link is not only connected to this post, it's in the comments. So guys, if you do want to speak to Luis, if you're experiencing some similar things to what he has before, or you just want to reach out and connect with another professional, obviously get onto LinkedIn, catch up with him. And of course, thank you for your time today, Luis.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, everyone.
Welcome. Thanks
for hearing from you.